Hi, it's Dwyer, gamblersadvisory.com, dwyervip.com. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Well, it's been a few days, and by now, no doubt, you've watched Anthony Joshua successfully defend his heavyweight title over Dominic Breazeale. Now, first, this website's really intended for gamblers, right? What I want people to do here is to separate the betting markets from the fighter. In other words, I'm going to say some things here, and I just want people to understand, the fighter, hey, it's all good, right? We can praise the fighter. We can say, hey, this guy fought valiantly. This guy takes his title seriously. We can say all of those things, right? I'm not here to diss the fighter's effort, or anything like that, or the stuff I'm knocking over here in the background. What I am here to say, though, is that the betting market on Anthony Joshua is completely out of whack. It's a bubble, right? Viewers here know we cleaned up on this fight. The over-under somehow was 3.5 rounds, right? 3.5 rounds, the halfway mark of the fourth round. More importantly, the odds you got on the over 3.5 rounds were a plus 350, a plus 280, right? Maybe I'm getting a little bit too excited here. It was a plus 280. In other words, bet $10, get back $28 in profit plus your $10. Now, let me just say, and I know some hardcore gamblers watch these videos. If you're looking at an over-under, and one side of it is a plus 280, you already know that something's wrong with that over-under, right? Especially when you're looking at an over-under this low. Right? The plus 280 was the tip-off to tell you that the market needed liquidity. They had to overpay you to be on the other side of the bet. Right? This was a classic betting bubble. Let me say, the betting market on Anthony Joshua right now is as much of a bubble as the EU. Right? Just as a quick aside, to the powers that be, taxation without representation is not sustainable. Right? You have a new generation out there, and there's always a new generation that comes up saying, hey, we're British. What happened to our sovereignty? Right? I know there's talk about the UK voting again to try to undo the last vote. Just understand the EU is unraveling, right? Your father's EU is no longer going to exist in a couple of years. Expect other countries to have other efforts to get out of that union. Well, look, as overvalued as the EU is, and I know I've digressed, that's how overvalued the betting market is on Anthony Joshua. Right? Let me point out that fighters start their careers, especially knockout fighters, with a lot of KOs. But then they get to the part of their career where they're fighting world-class opponents. Dominic Breazeale was actually the representative for the United States in the 2012 Olympics. Right? I know the guy says he's late to the game. Understand. He was unbeaten going into this match. Understand, he fought Fred Cassie. He fought Amir Manzoor. He fought some gatekeepers, some litmus tests in the heavyweight division before this fight went off. Right? The 2008 bronze medalist from the United States, otherwise known as Deontay Wilder, called it a 50-50 fight. Right? Breazeale's credible. Breazeale also was roughly the same height as Anthony Joshua. Right? Let's talk styles for a moment. Right? Anthony Joshua is cautious. Can we agree on that? He trusts his construct, not his instincts. Right? He's different than Mike Tyson, folks. Right? Very different. He's a cautious fighter, like Vladimir Klitschko. Now understand, as prodigious as Klitschko's power was, even when Klitschko's fighting a guy who you look at Klitschko and you say, wow, he's bigger, he's stronger, he hits harder. Klitschko would come out in the early rounds and, work behind a jab, proceed cautiously, make sure his defense is set. Right? That kind of fighter is going to have fights that last a few rounds. That fighter is not going to come in and say, look, I just feel that this guy's not ready, and then run across the ring like Lennox Lewis did against Andrew Galata. That's not Anthony Joshua. Right? He's not a guy who comes in and says, hey, I have more bullets than this guy. All right, let's have a shootout. That's not who he is. He's building the resume. He's not at the part in his career where he says, look, people already know who I am. Let me take some chances on this job assignment. No, this is the guy who, thinks he has a bright future ahead. So, he's being handed a playbook. Right? He's not writing his own playbook. He's being handed a playbook. Right, on what to say, how to present himself, what to do in the ring. Right? Let's talk about the tools in his tool set too. Like Deontay Wilder, he has an A+ long right hand, doesn't he? Right? If he hits you on the side of your head with that right hand and you're unprotected, it's over. You're on the canvas. Let me say this too. He has a new British tradition going on, right? Carl Froch used to be able to throw a great right uppercut, right? In other words, the way Carl set it up, you didn't quite know if he was throwing a straight right hand or if he was dipping the shoulder to throw an uppercut. It makes a difference, right? Because if I'm on defense and you're throwing a right hand to my head, I'm going to have a hand like this, right? I'm going to try to block that right hand, not have it hit my head. But if you come up and you look like you're throwing that right hand, but instead you're going to dip a shoulder and throw a right uppercut, right? If that's your game, understand, while my hand is here, if you could get that uppercut right here, I'm in trouble, right? Of course, we know a defensive fighter would be linked this way, might even have another hand like this, so you'd have a hard time finding his chin. Well, like Carl Froch and like Chris Eubank, right? Anthony Joshua can throw a really good right uppercut. He makes it look like a straight right hand, but then he dips the shoulder and he throws an uppercut and it's beautiful, right? But he's cautious. He's not gonna let his hands go, right? Unless the light is green. Right? If you're reeling around the ring or if you're tired, he'll let his hands go. But if it's early in a fight, right, and he's entered the ring, and you can imagine, he reminds me of Jeb Bush in a way, the former presidential candidate here, right? He's scripted. He's coming in the ring. He looks a certain way and stuff like that. He's a bit scripted. By the time the fight starts, look, he's remembering the instructions he's been given. Right? So, he's in the ring like Vladimir Klitschko, and he's cautious. he's not going to throw caution to the wind. He's a little bit different than the Carl Froch who fought Lucien Bute, isn't he? Right there, Carl Froch sees things, he's just making it happen. Right here, you have a younger fighter making a name for himself. The point I'm making is, this is different than Tyson. Think about the personalities. Think about the interviews. Right? If you're a gambler, you have to profile the athlete a little bit, don't you? Anthony Joshua strikes me as a guy who shows up with a few cute lines for an interview. Mike Tyson, back in the day, was off the... Hell, Mike Tyson today is off the cuff in interviews. Right? If it hits Mike and he wants to say it, he says it. Right? Tyson used to say things like, look, I wanted to make the guy's bone go back in his brain and stuff like that. Right? Tyson's not a guy who you say, hey, follow this script. Mike, in this fight, here's exactly what I want you to do in these rounds. Forget it. Right? Tyson's like Joe Frazier. Right? For gamblers, it makes a huge difference. Because if the fighter's like Mike Tyson, the odds of the under-hitting are far greater. Because if Tyson comes in and he sees something, right? Think Chavez Sr., Julio Cesar Chavez, right? If Cesar Chavez comes in and he sees something, he's going to go with it. You're suddenly dealing with Mike Tyson under your chin, like Brian Nielsen did, like Marvis Frazier did. Right? You're dealing with the guy letting both hands go. I believe Vladimir Klitschko, I believe Anthony Joshua are different personality types. I believe these guys show up and they have a checklist. Right? So, you're the idiot opponent who, isn't guarding against the uppercut. Right? You're like, hit me in the chin. Hey, my chin's right here. Hit me in the chin. And I believe these guys, the Klitschko, Joshua, by the way, Klitschko loves Joshua. Right? Look up Klitschko interviews where he mentions Joshua. I believe those fighters come in and they say, establish the jab. Check. Have hands up. Check. Right? The uppercut's a little bit lower on the list, and it's risky for the first round, right? Because an uppercut, I got to lean in, and who knows? Maybe you're alert and you're setting a trap. You're suckering me, right? So I jump in, and you're like, Marquez, you got a gift for me at the end of the mall, right? Okay, look, you and I know the Mike Tysons of the world. They come in, they see your chin's hanging out. Hey, they're going for it. It's like, look, I got the hand speed. This guy's chin's hanging out. What more do I need to know? Checklist? What checklist? Mike Tyson put it best. He says everyone has a plan until they get hit in the mouth. Right? Mike's there to hit you in the mouth. Now, I know Joshua has a lot of early KOs. Right? I know that. My point to you is that's going to taper a bit. The guys he's fighting are more distinguished than the guys he's fought before. Right? Dominic Breazeale's in his prime. There's no question about it. We don't have to guess like we did with Kevin Johnson. Right? So, I believe that Joshua is cautious. That made it less likely for the under. I also believe that if you know what you're doing, you can block a big part of Joshua's game. I don't believe in the first round, if you're alert, you're going to get knocked out by a left hook from him. Right? I don't think Joshua's left hook is as A+. And by A+, I mean it could be the first punch of the fight. It'll knock you out. As his straight right hand. That's an A+ punch. So Dominic Breazeale, look at him early. He comes in. Guess what, folks? He has his hand up to guard against the right hand. Right? Joshua's not going to come hunting him down. Now keep in mind, this is with Joshua having a decided hand speed advantage. Right? Joshua's not going to let his hands go. Right? Keep in mind, too, the height dynamic. Joshua's not throwing right hands from the sky. They're roughly the same height. Breazeale can see when the right hand is coming. Right? So, Joshua throws big punches. He's a big puncher. But Breazeale's ready, and Breazeale, I believe, knew. Right? I have to worry about his straight right hand. As the fight progresses, I'll have to worry about his uppercut. But not too early, because this brother's cautious. Right? If I get hit with a left hook, okay, I'm going to get shaken up. Don't get me wrong. That left hook is not thrown in a pillow, right? That's a tough punch. But that doesn't carry the power that Joshua's right hand carries. Right? Also, don't be fooled by the illusion here of this fight. If we're thinking about Joshua against other opponents, right? Understand, neither of these guys used a lot of lateral movement. They were standing pretty much in front of each other. This fight didn't show you how Joshua would handle a guy with a lot of lateral movement. Right? Also, neither of these guys really bent at the waist. Right? They were pretty upright. You don't know how Joshua would be able to deal, let's say, with the Carlos Takam, the guy who Joseph Parker just beat officially. Right? I personally feel Takam won that fight, but whatever. Right? Here you had a tall guy with less hand speed who was right in front of Joshua. So don't get too carried away with this fight. Understand, though, this fight made it to the 7th round, didn't it? Right? Didn't it? Now, let me say this about a possible fight against Joseph Parker. Right? Understand that Parker, and I know, by the way, Parker, a lot of KOs, early KOs. I'm aware of it. Right? You look at the resumes of these guys and you say, oh, these guys are Mike Tyson types. Parker's also cautious. He's not coming in free swinging. This isn't Nigel Benn. Right? No. He is like Joshua. Right? The difference between the two guys, in my opinion, and I know it sounds ridiculous, is that Parker has faced Carlos Takam, who I think presents a dynamic that I'm not sure how Joshua does against. Right? Parker also, when he lets his hands go, he has one of the best jabs in the heavyweight division. It's a pile driver. Right? It's a pile driver. Now, I'll say this. In my opinion, the safe way to play Joshua against Parker, especially since Parker just went the distance against Carlos Takam, right, which already tells us more about Parker than we know about Joshua in the later rounds. Right? The safe way to play it is to take both guys by KO. Right? Isn't it? Because let's just say neither guy is that defensively gifted. I thought Takam had opportunities against Parker where Parker was wide open to get hit. Right? He was leaning back. Don't get me wrong, he fought courageously. You know, I know Parker's mentally tough because of that fight. Right? But Parker's leaning back, and let's just say, you know, Parker's not exactly putting a hand up or, you know, showing me the kind of defense where I'm thinking, okay, this guy's a defensive fighter. No. Parker and Joshua are both cautious hunters. Right? They are. But I'll say, If Joshua can just land one long right hand, same thing with Deontay Wilder, by the way, they can knock out anybody. Let me say this too about Deontay Wilder. Now, Joshua's in an interesting zone. He's very athletic. Very athletic. But he doesn't move as well as Deontay Wilder. He just doesn't. Wilder's a KO puncher, like Joshua. Long right hand, like Joshua. I'm guessing Wilder looked at this film and must have been encouraged. Right? I'm sure Wilder figured out that Breazeale didn't let his hands go enough. You have to raise the room temperature against Joshua, don't you? And Breazeale doesn't have Wilder's lateral movement. Right? So, let me just say, these are very exciting times in the heavyweight division. Styles do make fights. This is an interesting era because it's a flat-footed era where guys are taller, right? How many heavyweights could possibly be taller than 6'5"? You got a bevy of them. Have I mentioned Tyson Fury? Right? This is the post-Klitschko heavyweight division. Right? Vladimir Klitschko's still out there. Right? This is an era where you have a bunch of tall guys, all of whom are trying to land that big right hand. Right? All of them. Right? Pity we don't have a Mike Tyson, a short guy, to take advantage of the fact that many of these guys don't look like they could bend at the waist and reach. But here's the one thing I do know. The betting market on Anthony Joshua is completely outrageous. Let's hope the casinos are silly enough to give us another 3.5 round over-under where the over is a plus 280 against a world-class opponent. Right? Let me close by saying this. I understand Tyson Fury hurt his foot. Right? I encourage people to look at the photos of Tyson Fury's hurt ankle. Right? Let me just say this. Tyson Fury, in my opinion, is a different level than Anthony Joshua. Right? I know people think that for some reason I'm overcrediting Tyson Fury. But what I want people to do is to look at Fury's lateral movement. Lateral movement you didn't see in this fight. Look at Fury's lateral movement against Vladimir Klitschko. Understand, when a creative fighter, a guy who is trusting his instincts, right, isn't overly scripted, is in the ring and he's able to move and feint against a guy who, is scripted, has a playbook, has to fight in a certain style, you're going to have situations where the Vladimir Klitschko type fighter, the robotic fighter, looks paralyzed, is throwing 5 punches around. Why? Because a Tyson Fury is feinting danger. Right? He's hinting at right hands. He's hinting at throwing punches. That rule-bound Vladimir Klitschko has a predetermined, almost software-driven response to. Right now here, Anthony Joshua was able to open up because, quite frankly, Dominic Breazeale didn't throw enough punches. And Dominic Breazeale was too much in front of him. Right? What happens when Joshua has to hit a moving target? Right? Let me say this too. Another guy who would clean up in this era is Muhammad Ali, prime Ali, 1960s era Ali. Because he'd be moving around the ring, right? He'd be forcing guys like Joshua, who like to drive 40 miles an hour, to actually drive 65, to drive 70 miles an hour, to get out of his script, right? Because he'd be moving and he'd be feinting. He would force Joshua to fight at a rate and at a volume that he's not comfortable with, right? I would expect a prime Ali Joshua match to look like Ali Cleveland Williams, to look like Ali Ernie Terrell, right? So just be aware of the bubble, the betting bubble, when it comes to Anthony Joshua. He's at the part of his career where fights are gonna go a few rounds, right? Sergey Kovalev is two-handed. He has dynamite in both hands. He can knock you out with both hands. And even he fought Bernard Hopkins, and that fight went the distance. He fought Pascal. That fight went. Those fights went more than 3.5 rounds. Right? The betting market is out of whack for Anthony Joshua fights. There's a sizable portion of the public that believes that this guy can close out bona fide heavyweight contenders in 3.5 rounds or less, right? They're willing to bid up that side of the play to, far less than even money, right? Just be aware that that's a bubble. Bubbles pop, right? I'm sure many of us were in line cashing in nicely when this fight went past the midway point of the 4th round, right? Expect more Joshua fights to do so. Let me close too in saying, and this is just personality profiling, right? I want to compare and contrast Anthony Joshua, right? Cautious, rehearsed, scripted, right? With Adrian Broner, different personality type, right? Broner looks like he loves the spotlight. He walks in the arena, he wants to be in front of 20,000 fans, right? The part Broner doesn't get is staying in shape, right? Keeping, Broner gets the celebrity part, right? He's creating his own persona. I know he has a longtime trainer. I know he has longtime friends around him and stuff like that. But Broner's his own man, right? Now, I'm just telling you that over time, Anthony Joshua's approach to the sport is going to be increasingly heavier and heavier for him to carry, right? Because when you're around a group of people and they're sitting down and they're telling you how to portray yourself and stuff like that, and you're in the ring and you're being cautious and you believe, look, if I just do this the right way, right? If I just follow the right rules, I'm gonna, get to the promised land. I'm just telling you, he's gonna end up in the ring sooner or later with an Adrian Broner type, who, look, man, training for the fight, practice, Allen Iverson type guy. The practice part, maybe that's hard for Adrian Broner. The discipline part, maybe that's hard for Adrian Broner. But he knows how to fight. This is the James Toney part of the sport. He knows how to fight. He's not burdened with other people's expectations, right? If he sees a chin and there's a chance for an uppercut, he's going to throw it, right? He can walk in the ring. He doesn't have to talk with the diction that his handlers want him to talk with. Hell, his handlers work for him, not the other way around, right? I saw Anthony Joshua in an earlier generation. Oscar De La Hoya. Right? I'm just telling you, when you're living that kind of life, just a little editorial, when you're living that kind of life, it's very hard to stay as long in the sport as, let's say, Bernard Hopkins has done, where Hopkins has always been Bernard Hopkins, his own man. Right? He's the boss. He's doing it, in Frank Sinatra's words, his way. Right? Joshua, after the fight, I thought the post-fight interview was interesting. He said, yeah, man, I'm tired. He said, I'm going to take time off. Right? I believe Joshua needs time off. Look at his body. You get the feeling this guy is always training. This guy is always representing the United Kingdom, right? Olympics, not pro career, as opposed to representing himself. Tyson Fury in interviews has made the claim that Joshua is being told what to say. Right? Tyson Fury's his own man. Right? If Fury signs to fight Joshua, and by the way, some casinos, look up your sports book, actually have Joshua's favorite in that fight. That would be as interesting a contrast in personalities, in my opinion, as Ali Joe Frazier. Anyway, that's how I see it. Let me hear from you. Leave your comments for me here online. Visit us at gamblersadvisory.com. Thanks for stopping by.